Well, we're rapidly approaching the point with this wiring harness where I can plug it into the computer and plug it into a few sensors on the engine, and maybe it'll run if I successfully deleted the VATs on the computer. But we've got one more hurdle to overcome because I'm using the VLOM valley cover still, and I'm using a truck intake reversed on the LS4. The wire will not plug into the oil pressure sensor. And GM, in their infinite wisdom, decided to use a 16 millimeter by 1.5 thread, which is common for bolts but not really fittings. But on Amazon, I found a couple fittings that are going to adapt me over to a 90 degree, and I'll be able to screw this oil pressure sensor into the side of it. So I'm going to try that. To me, that seems to be the easy way around this without finding another port somewhere on the block to put the oil pressure sensor on. Hopefully this works. So much easier with the intake off. Right, these two fittings, this one has an O-ring seal on it. This one is supposed to be pipe thread. Doesn't really feel like pipe thread because it goes all the way down and never gets tight. But there's going to be some thread tape used on that. This one here, I do not know. This is a straight thread, and they send it with two seals on it like that. And the reason for the two seals is because it is a straight thread, and all it does is bottoms out in the hole, and it bottoms out before it gets to the point where it'd be tight enough for only one of these seals to be on it. But in my opinion, these seals are after the fact because they're supposed to hold pressure, and they're on the outside of the threads where they'd be easy to push away from it. So I'm going to go with a generous helping of thread tape on that and hope that seals up these threads good enough to hold the oil pressure in. Well, I didn't lie, but I did change my mind. I decided to use black RTV to seal all the threads on this fitting except for the one with the O-ring on it. Check the video description. I'll let you know if it leaks. I can give you a 100% guarantee that it's not going to leak for a little while. Got to get it running first. I'm going to swap this O-ring out for a slightly thicker O-ring on this fitting because when I tighten it down into the block, just finger tight, it just disappeared down into the block, and this O-ring doesn't really press against the flange in this. So I'm going with a slightly larger O-ring from a high quality vendor, Harbor Freight. And hopefully this thing ends up pointing in the right direction when it comes to a stop. Well, it's going round and round. And how much do you want to make a bet it stops pointed right at that line? Still turning, still turning, still turning. All right, it made it past it. If I can get it pointed this direction, I'll be very happy, but if it stops anywhere in here, I'm good with all that. That seems pretty tight right there. Let's see if this moves any further. I think that's about maxed out. All right, should have checked this before I did this. This thread bottoms out in the bottom of the hole before it hits the washer right here. So I'm going to have to find an O-ring that will fit down in the bottom of there and seal this at the bottom against an O-ring, I hope. Once again, check in the video description. I'll let you know how bad it leaks. So this is the same size O-ring that I used right there. I'm just going to slide this down into the bottom, tighten this down into it, and hope it seals. Okay. Okay, I lied. I'm not going to use the same size O-ring because that one won't lay flat in the bottom of that hole. Take two. Perfect. that feels good. It feels like it's tightening down against an O-ring seal. Intake is back on. Looks good. Looks like it's done to me. Got a ways to go on the wiring harness yet, but the oil pressure sending unit is out of the way of the intake, and the intake is bolted down. When and if I get this thing running, I will put an update in the video description as to whether or not it leaks, how bad it leaks, or what I have to do to fix it. But until then, I'm going to go back to working on some wiring. Alright, like, subscribe, share, leave a comment, and as always, thanks for watching.